Hi, everybody. It's great to see so many people coming out on a lunchtime, and really thrilled to be speaking about, and not me, Alyssa will be the star of this show, speaking about our great film archive, which is by far our largest 20th century collection, and I think one of the top five regional film archives in the country. So, Alyssa, please take it away.
Hi, so just a brief introduction. My name is Alyssa Heflin. I am the moving image and audio archivist for the Rhode Island Historical Society. I got my certification from the George Eastman Museum in Rochester, New York. So I know a few things of what I'm saying today. But we're just going to get right into it. So I just wanted to spend today talking about specifically the moving image collection. We do have a pretty large audio collection, but I just wanted to keep things focused a little bit. So just one moment. Perfect. So I wanted to start with the basics, which is just the question of what is film preservation, not in like an abstract sense, but in the very practical concerns of what we do on a day-to-day basis. So preserving film as a material, the most two important details are you have to keep it cool and keep it dry. They really drill that into us in school, and it's really one of the most important things because it helps prevent any decay. And when film is completely taken care of in that manner, it can last longer than basically any format, including videotape and digital format, up until around like 500 years or so. So as long as you're keeping it cool and dry, it's very stable. When I say cool, the recommended temperature is around 36 degrees Fahrenheit. And dry, we want to keep the humidity low, and that's around a 20 to 30% humidity rate. Film preservation also involves making sure that the material can be accessed by as many patrons as possible. Obviously, that takes a lot of labor and time and money, so certain things are prioritized. Obviously, film that is in very late stages of decay are often prioritized so that we have a surviving copy either moved into a digital format or moved onto new film stock, which is usually done by outside labs. Um, Videotape as well is actually very at risk, maybe more so than some more stable films because you need specific machines to play them. And those machines, when they stop being manufactured, the parts start being manufactured, they break down, and then you lose access to them. This is true of DVDs as well. So those are very important to make sure that they're properly digitized as well in order to provide access to our patrons. Right. So with that said, I just want to talk about the history of our collection a little bit. It was created in 1969 with the donation of 5.8 million feet of 16 millimeter news film from the WPRI news organization and the employee Joe Fogarty, who wanted to make sure that it wasn't just going to go in a garbage bin, which is where a lot of news film tends to go sometimes. I'll talk a little bit more about that collection, but it's very expansive and it's all very interesting. The creation of that archive then made us one of the first regional film archives in the country. It has now grown to a pretty large size. We have over 9 million feet of film in our entire collection. So it's gotten quite large now. As far as things that are in our collection, we have many different types of collection that range from things such as early Rhode Island silent films. Rhode Island had its own film industry before the film industry moved out to Hollywood, and we do have some of the old silent films being held currently at the Library of Congress because they are made of a more hazardous film material than standard film. We have several education films as well as commercials, campaign ads, industrial/promotion films, as well as a lot of news film too, which makes up the bulk of our collection. Um, no, we don't only have just film, we have several different types of videotape in different various formats, as well as some DVDs and some items that were created for digital media originally. So internet videos and digital videos and things such as that. So to start off some of our major collections, um, the WJAR collection is one of our biggest one. It is a news station that opened in 1952, and we have all the film from then until the studio switched to videotape. in 1981. There are around 50,000 stories in that collection. It's very expansive. If you're interested in looking it up, if you ever go to the Rhode Island Historical Society website and look at the moving image section of the cabinet, a lot of the WJAR material is documented on there, so you can see what exactly is available. But it's made up entirely of 16 millimeter film, which, for reference, is a more consumer grade film. It was invented in order for institutions, and it's was used primarily on television. It was smaller and more portable and more affordable than the larger 35 millimeter film, which was used mostly by major film studios at the time. Um, it is made up of a mixture of silent and sound footage. A lot of times the footage is silent just because it was footage made with the intention that the newscasters were going to talk over it. When the footage is donated, it doesn't necessarily come with that commentary in place already. So a lot of times it's just that B-roll footage, which is very interesting to see, as well as some things that were not included on normal newscasts and were left on the cutting room floor. But there are interviews as well and things with sound that have a little bit more context. And then a strong mix of both black and white footage and color footage. It just depends on the date. As time goes on, you start to see more things in color. Um, and then this is another big one. This is, like I said, this is the WPRI collection, which is the first major collection donated to the Rhode Island Historical Society. As I said before, it's approximately 5.8 million feet of 16 millimeter film. The majority, much like WJAR, is made up of the daily news films, but also includes special programs, PSAs, outtakes, many different pieces of material that just would float around the news station. This, unlike WJAR, is still an ongoing project. It's a very large collection, and the process of cataloging and rehousing the WPR collection is very extensive. It's organized by date, so we know when if researchers come in looking for a specific date, we can usually check in there to see what is available and if the subject they're looking for is actually in the collection. But currently, we have yet to finish going through every single item to catalog all the different all the different film stories that are on there. And to give an example of what something that looks like what a fully organized box of film looks like currently, I actually want to go back to talk about this picture here, which is every single one of those reels of films is something different. They all have a little label on them that indicates the date that they were created for, and then a brief description of the subject, which can be descriptive or vague, depending on how they were feeling on the day. Um, and those were usually applied by the news station. So that is sort of the way the stuff that we have to deal with as a film archivist is determining what is just on these pieces of film in the first place. The great thing about film, as opposed to something like videotape, is that you don't necessarily need a machine to be able to identify film and identify what's on it. All you need is a light box or just some light at all, because you can just roll it out and actually see the images. This is another reason why videotapes are slightly in more danger than standard film, because you can't see what's on a tape unless you have a special machine to play it. And if you don't, if it's not labeled, it could be anything. So that's always something to keep in mind. There are many other collections as well. I just wanted to highlight a couple very unique ones. A couple of them aren't on site, but are at the Library of Congress, who we have a partnership, and they have some of our material there, some of the more at-risk materials. There is the Gordon collection. That is a collection of 35 millimeter nitrate negatives of feature and short films made in Rhode Island. Very early 20th century. We're talking like the 1910s or so. Um, they're being cared for properly. Nitrate as a material, if you don't know, for context, is very flammable. And when it gets set on fire, you can't put it out. So that is a major issue and part of the reason why we want to make sure that they're stored in a proper place and not with the rest of the material. Thankfully, that has been done by some of my predecessors. We also have the Library of Congress paper print collection, which is not stored here, but is very interesting. So to explain what a paper print is, originally, the way copyright works for film is that a copy of the film had to be sent to the Library of Congress at the time, and still is to this day. Nowadays, they normally just send a DVD or a digital file. In the past, they used to send film reels, and in the far past, again, like the 1910s, we're talking about, they would copy it onto paper, just normal paper frame by frame, and then that would be sent into the Library of Congress as copyright proof so that it could be put under copyright. Because of the fact that so many silent films have been lost, a lot of early silent films, many of these paper versions are now the only versions of these films that actually exist anymore. So processes are made to care for them properly and make sure to see if they can be translated back to an actual film format. So we have those were discovered in the Library of Congress, I believe. We didn't own them originally, but the Library of Congress reached out to us when they discovered them and let us know. And then we have the serials collection as well. This is a collection of very early Rhode Island movies, trailers, home movies, and commercials. A very mixed category of stuff. It is all collected by the amateur historian Russell S. Searles. A big part of building a film collection is oftentimes talking to film collectors. And Russell S. Searles was a major film collector in the area and was kind enough to donate all of this material to us, which we currently have in the archive. That's one of the ones that is on site. And so one of the things I really wanted to talk about is just the process of working just in a film archive in terms of the day-to-day processes, because I think that's something that is very vague to a lot of people. It's something that is not necessarily super clear how that job works. So it's slightly intensive in terms of the duties that I have to do every day. So I have to do things such as film repair. This can be anything from checking to see if any decay has occurred in the film. It can be fixing splices so that it can properly run through a projector, which means that if the film strip literally just breaks apart, I have to put it back together. I have to clean debris, tape residue off of film to make sure that it's presentable and try to preserve the image as much as possible. Um, and then there's a lot of film viewing involved too. Like I said, although you don't have to play it on a machine, it definitely is much easier to just watch it on a machine. So as you can see, the picture here is our Steenbeck. It was donated to us. It was a machine that throughout film history was generally used for film viewing and editing. We just use it for viewing. It's very, very fun to use, frankly. Um, and yeah, so that is where we set it up to actually view the films and see what's on them, and also to record videos for patrons who want to see material that is not currently digitized. Unfortunately, we don't have patrons come up and use the machine themselves because it's very delicate and the film is very delicate. So we want to make sure there are no issues with it breaking or being put into the machine incorrectly. Um, so that's one of the major day-to-day duties. And along with that comes the cataloging of all the material. This is important. This is done just whenever I have free time, or alternatively, whenever a specific film is pulled by a patron who wants to see it, I'll usually catalog it alongside with it. This makes it easier to access for the patrons. It makes it so that any information you are searching for that might be related to the film in question becomes public and available on the cabinet on the Rhode Island Historical Society website. Um, oh, totally blanked for a second. Okay, yeah. So that can be anything such as the subject, just the title of the film. It can be the locations that are in there. If people are looking for specific areas of Rhode Island, if people are interested in specific people, if they are governors or politicians or celebrities, musicians, or anybody like that. The dates, usually we go with a range of dates because it's not always accurate, and a lot of the news footage that we have is organized by was donated to us in chunks that are like a specific week. So it's like I'm not going to pretend to know the weeks in 1970, 72, but it would be a week in June in 1972, and it would be a whole bunch, a whole mess of film. Um, so we tend to just err on the side of caution and just have the full week available to search. As well, we also handle incoming donations. There's still a lot of people that donate film. We always very much appreciate what they want to bring. So I have to handle making sure that the donations are uh, in line with the mission of the Historical Society, which means just it has to have something to do with Rhode Island. Occasionally, okay, oh, bit my tongue there. Occasionally, we'll have people come and want to donate something that, while very interesting or even very rare, unfortunately, doesn't really have anything to do with the Historical Society's mission. It doesn't really, we're not really related to Rhode Island or its history at all. At which point we will usually recommend other, or at least I will usually recommend other institutions that they can bring the material to. But yeah, we also coordinate with labs to digitize material. We don't have the equipment here to do digitization of film. We do have the ability to here to digitize audio cassettes, I would say. We do have that available and vinyl records as well. But unfortunately, the process of digitizing film is just a little bit above what we're currently capable of. So there are many outside labs that we'll talk to, and they are always very, very kind and very helpful. And we digitize things when documentarians want to use them. Again, when the film is just very much at risk, and just needs to be digitized just for its own safety and preservation. And then, like I said, I spend a lot of my time assisting outside researchers. I would say that makes out the bulk of my work when I'm not working physically with the film, is assisting researchers who reach out with any questions. You can always email the MEAC email to ask any questions that you might have if you're interested in the film collection at all. Um, and that is all I have for right now. So I was wondering if there are any questions at all.
So we don't currently have any questions in the chat, so feel
Okay.
free to send those along. In the meantime, Alyssa, do you want to talk a little bit about how the RHS, how the Film Archive works with the YouTube channel?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So we have the YouTube channel. I was wondering if we could possibly get a link to that in the chat as well so people can take a look. We often, when things are digitized, we will have them uploaded to the YouTube channel so that people can see them. There are a lot of very interesting videos up there currently. Um, that is something that we can only do when we have the actual copyright to the material. But if there's anything that we are allowed to post or are given permission to post to, um, then and we find of particular interest to the community. There's a lot of videos with regards to the civil rights movement that were uploaded in the past that I think are very interesting, especially with regard to the reverse freedom riders. Um, yeah, that is our YouTube channel. It's one of the main ways that the film interacts with the social media program.
Chili asks, would he be able to use film from the RHS collection in a presentation? If he found what he wanted, how would he obtain it?
Okay, that's a good question. Yeah. It would depend on the presentation. There would be certain restrictions involved if it was for like profit or anything, but if it was just for education, we would be able to discuss that more if you just reached out and emailed if you found any film you were interested in. I can always send reference videos to people, which again is just filmed off of the Steenbeck, or alternatively, we can talk about getting things digitized too as well if you want them in like a little higher quality. But absolutely, we always want to make sure that the film is available to the patrons. That is the ultimate goal of the archive, is to make sure that the people of Rhode Island can access um, this collection.
Great, thank you. Um, does anyone have any other questions for Alyssa about MIAC, the film archive preservation, or the collections the RHS holds?
While we're waiting for that, I would want to say that one of the things that we are sort of dipping our toe into, Alyssa mentioned a little bit of Born Digital collections. And so that is certainly going to be the next wave of video collecting, or at least, and we haven't. It's a good question. The tape era is also a question. I believe there's still considerable collections of tape out there in private hands, but Alyssa may have a better understanding of this or concept of this. But and collecting tape has its own challenges, given its fragility. The big challenge with Born Digital is simply going to be having enough sort of knowledge and server space to and cataloging sort of time to ingest those things. And every institution across the globe are facing these challenges. I wouldn't say we're on the cutting edge or anywhere near it, but because really we've only had a film archivist, a full-time film archivist, for the past 5 or 6 years. So, getting this collection, sort of getting control over this collection is a big challenge, but it's a great one too. And I'm really happy that Alyssa is here and doing that work. So if anybody has any other questions, just let us know.
So Ed had one other part of his question. What if he found something in the Library of Congress that he would like to use in a presentation? How might he obtain that? And I think that he's specifically talking about RHS collections that are held
Yes,
by
so that is a little bit more complicated. It would require me to reach out to them directly. It's a little bit more of a process. Like I said, things that aren't held on site, which is the nitrate film and the paper prints, are a little bit harder to get for us to get to patrons. So you would have to get in touch with me, and then I'd try to get in touch with some of the people that work with our collections there and see what we could do. But in terms of that, I can't make any promises that that's necessarily going to be the easiest thing to access if that's something that you're interested in.
Great, thank you. Do we have any other questions for Alyssa?
Okay.
Cool. If not, thank you everyone for being with us this afternoon. It's great, as always, to hear our collection staff talk about the amazing work that they do. And we hope to see you next week at our next collections talk, and the week after, and the week after. So until then, have a good rest of your day, and we'll see you next week.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.